stop, start, no flow. Fans are getting really sick of it and leaving in droves. And I don't think the referee's getting a fair crack. Like Barnes, you could see he was getting frustrated with the game himself. And this is the other thing about the TMO. He always only comes in when something's missed. But if the referee gets something wrong, you don't hear him coming in and saying, look, check, you got that wrong. And Artie's is a classic case. I don't care if he didn't see the replay, I did. And clearly, Artie had let go, within the rules, he let go of the player and then got back on the ball and he should have got the duck penalty, not a penalty against him. So you've got an inconsistency there. And then we've got this red card stuff. Like, we've got the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. Yes, I know and I understand and I appreciate that we have to look after our athletes. But our game is a contact sport game. And when you've got a player in the best form of his life, in Sam Cane, saying to you, look, I got called out with a late shift and he couldn't adjust. And then you see Khaleesi, the same thing happened to him. Two great players at the very best of their game who can't adjust in time to something that changes just like that. You're going to have contact, unintentional contact. To give that a red card, in my humble opinion, is just ridiculous. A, because it takes away the contest. B, it's not fair on the player that gets sent off because he's not committing foul play. Until we sit down at the very top and work out, right, how do we get some common sense into our officiating of the game, we're going to turn people off watch out by the droves.
Good morning all and welcome to Rugby Chat for 7th of November 2023, Melbourne Cup Day, but more importantly, it's good morning Geoff, good to see that we're terrible twins again, and also how can we go past not showing that as our opening to today's special show, because I tell you what, there's a lot to answer, and we have got a couple of experts on today. And just breaking news overnight, Sam Cane's red card has been upheld and he's been suspended for 3 games unless the All Black captain goes back to school and learns how to tackle. Good morning, Geoff.
Good morning, mate. That's a great introduction. I think Steve Hansen probably is speaking like all of us these last 10 days. It's been a lot to digest, hasn't it? And we had a bit of fun last week on our show, and we're going to have a bit more fun this week. And then I guess the best thing then is to just ditch it and move on. But it's really going to be really good to analyse it this morning anyway.
Yep. So without further ado, I'll bring on our 2 special guests and I'll get you to introduce them to the wide world, young Geoff. Here we go. Good morning.
Look at these good-looking fellas. Herb, how are you? Howie, how are you, mate? All good?
Good, thanks, Geoff. Hey, Herbie.
You good, mate? How you doing?
Good.
Buddy, good. Good to have you guys on board. So for all our listeners here, obviously I want to introduce these guys. They don't really need much introduction. Both former All Blacks, not only first-class players, but also first-class coaches. Kevin Schuler, obviously, with the Chiefs, and Shane Howarth with the Blues. So we're very, very lucky to have 2 former All Blacks. All Black loose forward, Herb Schuler, and All Black and Wales fullback, Shane Howarth. Yeah, so welcome, gentlemen. Bloody brilliant. And before we start, obviously, you saw that little clip there from Steve Hansen, former All Black coach. I think what he was saying was pretty much what all of us have been thinking and saying, certainly standing around water coolers at work, etc., via messages and emails. Just that little bit of frustration, I think, at the result. And I want to make it clear that we're not here as sore losers. I think that's really important to differentiate. We're here to sort of analyse it and try and get an understanding of the whys and why were these decisions made. And again, be really clear, we're not anti-Wayne Barnes at all. I think he was just refereeing within the laws of the game. So we've got nothing against him. Maybe question marks are obviously around the TMO.
2007 we still have though, Geoff.
Yeah, I know, mate. Yeah, I know. I've still got some grudges there, but so without further ado, what I'd like
to go, Herbie.
I've asked both of you guys to come on as I've seen some of the chat that we've done amongst ourselves over the last 10 days. And in particular, just, around some of the rulings, etc. So we want to sort of maybe just delve into that. But firstly, can we get a bit of an analysis? How you guys are feeling 10 days on? Have you calmed down a bit? We'll start with you, Herb, and give us your thoughts on the last 10 days, mate.
Oh, look, at the end of the day, you've got to congratulate South Africa. I mean, even at the game time, well, it's hard, seeing us having to go to plan B or plan C during a game to stay in it, and getting that close and thinking, everyone's going, well, gee, if we'd had 15, it could have been different, but that's not what it was. You still got to give amazing ups to South Africa because, they have a formula and a strategy and a way of playing games that is very hard to beat. And the hardest team to beat is normally one that wins. And I think there's an interesting South African friend of mine sent through a little pager off Facebook, and it had all the top 6 teams playing the top 6 teams at the Rugby World Cup. And South Africa played 5 other top teams and won 4 of them. So, they did the hard yards to get there. And, but hey, we're over it. But it is good it has created this whole storm of, when you see stuff in real time and you look at it and you look at 1 and 2 and they look almost identical, but there's a whole lot of nuances and complexities that are really, really hard to get your head around. So it'd be good to have a chat today.
Yeah, good. Excellent. Good work. And Howie as well, I really enjoyed that post you put up. One of the main things you talked about was, we've got to bring back that 20-minute red. Something's got to be done to lose your All Black captain, especially in your number 7. So how's the 10 days been for you, mate? Have you calmed down a bit? Have you absorbed it, taken it on board?
Jeff, I was never grumpy. I well said, Herbie. We have to say congrats to the Springboks. They won it. And I think in the cloud of mist that all the Kiwis saw, don't forget, South Africa played 20 minutes of the second half with 14 men. So we had opportunities to win it. With the Richie's conversion, Geordie's penalty, we kicked a couple to the corner where we probably should have kicked for post. So, before we get into the depth of the whole game and how much probably this has highlighted it, which thankfully it has, you do have to congratulate South Africa. They hung on and they won. We had our chances. And so, I know we'll dig deeper into what it is, but I fear for the game of rugby. If this is what's going to be happening, and what Shag said's dead right. It's a collision sport, and both Sam and Sia's tackles were accidents. They were accidents by probably that much, and it changes a game that is supposed to be a spectacle and the pinnacle of the sport we all love, and it turned the game into a bit of a mockery. And therein lies the worry with me. Is that if you said to me, Shane, are you going to watch the World Cup final again or are you going to watch the NRL? I'll watch the NRL. Why would I go back and watch that when I can watch Penrith playing Brisbane? That was an outstanding game.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how the hell we're going to do that, but we have to get our sport back to, and I hate saying the old days, but gee, you go back 20, 30 years, the game of rugby was flowing, it was playing, Christ, the scrums were down and gone before the ref had even bloody got there. So I think how we get back to something like that the game flows, and we keep 15 versus 15 on the field. I mean, I'm no expert, but gee, I've got in the shop a lot of customers are turning off rugby. They just can't watch it. So this, I think the finals really brought a spotlight on the faults within the game, and we really need the brains to figure out how the hell we get back to people loving it and wanting to watch it.
And that's the key, and this is one of the things we mentioned on the show last week was you've got millions and millions of people around the world watching the pinnacle of rugby, which is our World Cup final once every 4 years, and people are just looking, thinking, what's going on? It's what was that call for compared to this call? And so before I go any further here, I just want to mention that the study that came out yesterday, published in the New Zealand Herald as well, one of the biggest studies done into impact. Now, I know what we're trying to do here at the IRB level and World Rugby level is to obviously make player safety the number one thing here. And we get that. I totally get that. But this is the results of the study. So basically what it's saying is on rugby's impact, 86% of forces experienced in the men's community game are comparable to or less than those encountered during everyday activities like running, jumping, or skipping. 94% of forces are lower than what was previously recorded on individuals riding a roller coaster. Most events with the highest measured forces are the result of poor tackling techniques and breakdown situations, which is something I want to come back to with you, Herb, what we talked about before.
Yep.
And the other thing, these findings have the potential to revolutionise how rugby is perceived, emphasising that the community game poses minimal risks to players' heads, challenging common misconceptions about the sport. Now, that just came out yesterday, a massive study done on rugby players. Now, the reason I want to bring that up is that, yes, there are injuries. It's just a given. But, I've seen guys being knocked out at basketball. I've seen major injuries in a lot of other sports. Yeah, rugby is a contact sport. You hit that on the head, Howie. But how do we go back and I guess we don't want to diminish the head contact, obviously. We want to take that away from the game as much as we can. But are we putting too much emphasis on player safety to the detriment of reducing the product that we're trying to put in front of people? So I want to put that to you guys first around that study. Obviously, the high-profile ones, Carl Heyman, yeah, look, we see that. There's a lot of people that are obviously suffering long-term injuries. But look, people may say differently, but I don't think I've got a head injury. I played a lot of footy. You guys did too. You seem to be pretty switched on dudes. I don't know too many guys who have major head injuries. So are we putting too much emphasis on player safety when you look at that study at the detriment of the product? So I'll put that back to you guys first, and then we can talk further on this. So Herb, do you want to go first on that one?
Yeah, it's an interesting point because, just general health and safety in the workplace. You're trying to eliminate, and if you can't eliminate it, you got to, minimize or isolate it. And in rugby, you're never going to eliminate collisions because that's what the game is, and that's what the attraction is. So, and I just think a lot of it's about the common sense, but overemphasizing the safety aspect. And it's great to see a research like this or study like this is coming out and saying, well, yeah, obviously there are, it's not 0%, but it's also maybe not as high as we were generally thinking. Yeah. But I think so. Yeah, I think that, and the other element of it is what's an accident and what's foul play, and there's a whole other raft of things that come into it. So over refereeing just around safety and, for example, making those thresholds red cards, for example, at the top end, is creating an environment where, it's probably less attractive and less beneficial going forward. So certainly understanding what's a good tackle, what's good contact. Like you said, most of those issues are occurring in the collision or post-collision in the ruck. So what's a good way to enter? What's the safest way to enter? All those things, players. And then players and referees and coaches all need to be aligned on how that's delivered. So what the ref might be saying or looking for in the game is exactly the same as what's being coached and trained on the paddock and what the punters are going to expect to see on the TVs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good point.
Well said, Herbie. It's very interesting, guys. I played up in Europe a bit, and there's a couple of referees that I know, and it was very interesting. One, I won't name them, but there's a real worry with referees up north about litigation about that, and that's really sad to hear. That referees, not all, and it's not in the forefront of their minds, are worried about litigation of head injuries of a game they may be controlling, and I think that's a concern. It really is a concern because, as Herbie said, it's a collision game, so you're never going to take those out. It used to be red cards were kneeing, kicking, punching, gouging. Now it's you get a tackle wrong by, like I said, by a couple of inches, as Kane and Khaleesi did, and it changes the game. How many red cards do we have during the Super Rugby, or yellow cards, or so that turns the game off? And yet, Jesse Creel bounced straight back up and played. If it hadn't been the TMO going, I need to have a look at that, and slowing it down and making it look like a car crash, we wouldn't have known. Same with Sia Khaleesi on Artie. Artie was straight back up and playing. Now, it's I don't know whether you can grade them, how you can grade them. And like I've said rugby needs to adopt the NRL. It needs to adopt we'll put that on a report and we'll play on. And then we gauge how much it is. Sam to get 3 games after that, I think is just World Rugby going, here, we're right. The red card was right. And we're going to give him 3 games. And now he has to go to a tackle school. Well, shit, how many times has Sam Cane tackled? Why is he going to a bloody tackle school? You're kidding me. That he
Those
got
All Black
wrong
coaches
by
obviously
3
aren't good
inches.
enough. Yeah.
You know, and I come back to, that's a real worry if our game is heading down that pathway, because, you know, you're not only going to turn bloody the supporters off and the watchers on TV, but you're going to turn rugby players off, because they're going to worry every time they go into a tackle, shucks, am I a little bit too high? Gee, if I accidentally hit him shucks, now I'm red card and I'm gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it takes away that instinct, doesn't it? You know, I mean, we're talking milliseconds and millimeters to work in and time frames. So, you know, it's ridiculous. So the question I've got for both of you now then is, they're talking about mitigating circumstances. What do you actually understand what they mean by that? I mean, can you try and explain to our listeners?
Haven't got a clue.
Well, there's Jason Ryan just saying right after the game, we just want consistency. We just want consistency. So Kevin's going to run through 4 little photos here, and maybe we can just have a quick look at these and comment.
Yeah, and also I just want to add, as more of a sports watcher, and, you know, again, thank you, gentlemen, for joining the show, is that what it's taken away from the technical aspect is that enjoyment of actually watching the game. I mean, I was through the roof when Aaron Smith scored that try. When Bowden Barrett scored the try, I sat there and I looked at my buddy who was watching the game with me, and we didn't know what to do. That's the point that I want to get across. I sat there and I thought, you know, you're talking about games of milliseconds. Emotions are milliseconds. The fan watching the game is milliseconds. And then all of a sudden, I'm sitting there watching Bowden Barrett score a try, second World Cup for him, World Cup final try. And I sat there and I went, do we high five? What do we do? I didn't celebrate it until Moanga missed the conversion. Yeah. I celebrated a miss because I knew, the try stood. So that is what annoys me more than anything, is the fans. If the fans can't sit back and go, you bloody beauty, well, how can, as players, can you get into that zone?
Yeah, good point.
So this one here, Khaleesi. So if you look at the collision here, again, it's making contact with the head. That's pretty obvious. That's why you got the yellow. To me, this was more a forceful. Like if you played this one in real time, which we haven't got the clip, he's actually driving Artie back. He actually has more time to actually drop, which is probably what saved him a red card. Whereas I think in Sam Cane's one, it seemed as though Jesse Creel sort of doubled back and ran into Cane. And when they talk about mitigating factors, was that Cane didn't actually drop his body weight enough. But again, when you're talking millimeters and milliseconds, this one here, I mean, it really is frustrating. And again, all we're asking for really is consistency, isn't it?
Kevin, if we're going to give yellow cards for that kind of tackle, we're going to be stopping the game every 3 or 4 minutes. So how many of those tackles were missed during the game? I mean, it would be interesting to go through and see it. But that was highlighted because the TMO thought, well, I better jump in here. And, you know, I as you said, we say it's a collision sport. So for both Cane and Khaleesi, they're yellows, and Cane's obviously went into a red. I can tell you now, there was probably 5 or 6 other incidents in the game that were very, very similar to what went on there, but they weren't picked up.
Oh, absolutely. We got the Ethan de Groot one there, Kevin. Can you roll on that one?
Yeah. What about the Etzebeth one?
That's Ethan there, de Groot. Now, de Groot actually went down injured. He didn't stay down long enough, obviously, to warrant a bit of a review of that. And so this is deemed legal.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So where does it stop?
Yeah. And the Etzebeth one, he led with a forearm, and even in real time, there it is. In real time, watching that game, and there's Wayne Barnes right there.
Yeah,
and we're just like, whoa, that's a yellow. And again, no consistency.
And that's what I'm alluding to, Kev. That switches people off. I mean, if Sam's was a red, Sia's was a red. Nothing against either of the guys, because neither of those guys are dirty, malicious players. They're not.
No.
Never have been. But they just got the collision wrong. So if one goes off for red, Sia has to be red. And again, it speaks to consistency. And that's not rambling on because you're a Kiwi and it was just, I thought, Kane, okay, yep, they're going to red card that. Sia did his, they're going to red card Khaleesi. No. And you sit back and you go, I don't get that.
No. And then again, you came back, you guys hit it on the head around, sorry, Herb, you guys hit it on the head around that malicious intent. So then, Herb, this is probably a good one to lead into what you were going to talk about, the mechanics, biomechanics, teaching, tackling technique.
So really interesting examples. The first thing I think is really important also is, the ball carrier shouldn't have unfair rights over and above the defender just because you've got the ball. So, when you make a collision with someone, so Jesse Creel and Sam Cane are probably about the same height. They might be an inch or so apart. Clearly, Jesse Creel in that first photo is on a big angle. And, he's coming up off the ground, and we all know about the dynamics of it. So, the tackler, if he's deemed to be the person who's, if everything else is equal, he's at fault, there's probably a bit of an issue there as well. So the onus should be on a ball carrier. There's reasons why a ball carrier has to choose to stay low and get his body position right. But I think that's a really important thing to get right first. And then the other thing is, it almost seems to be the way they're viewing these collisions is lower is safer. And I think we all know that, but lower isn't always safer. If I look at the Khaleesi screen, if you put that up there quickly, he's coming in and so two things. The biggest factor in safety and collisions is whether your head's up or not, whether you're actually seeing what's in front of you and then making the adjustments. Ironically, probably, I think on his other arm, because we talked about mitigating factors, I'll just say that cover, before about whether your arms are wrapping, whether it's a shoulder charge, there's a whole bunch of things, whether someone drops or whatever. If Khaleesi, as a arriving player, had come in arguably straight up and higher just to knock him back, he wouldn't have even hit him because his head wouldn't be leading. If he'd gone lower, could have been better. How low do you have to go? So in all these ones, there's different heights and it's all very dynamic. Sam Cane's one, like you said, coming around reacting, a pretty almost broken play, didn't have time to get lower. Creel didn't have time to get higher. You know what I mean? So I think that's really, really important part of it. But the biomechanics, like I say, lower isn't always safer. At 95, off the side of a scrum, tackling a number 8, too low, knee in the side of my temple, I was out gone cold, So we need to make sure that we understand what is the true biomechanics and what's safe. Often an upright tackle is actually the safest tackle to make because you're hitting with your chest and your front of your body and you're actually got eyes up the whole time and you got your best ability to adjust and, change your center of mass and stay agile. Where once you go too low, Khaleesi, he tucked his chin. He didn't know what he's running into. He didn't know that Artie was still coming down. If his head's been up, he might have, done something different and been less dangerous or reckless or careless. Yeah, interesting.
It is. So a question I've got for you guys here then is, could you guys now technically go back and coach again? Now, and the reason I say that is I mentioned this on the show last week is I feel as though I couldn't go back and coach in these rules because one of the things that we always used to work on, and we talked about before, I'd say to my players, look, rugby's not a contact sport, boys. Dancing's a contact sport. Rugby's a violent sport. It's a collision sport. And you'd go into rucks and you'd thrash these guys at trainings. It'd be low to high, it'd be crocodile rolls. It'd be real aggression. And I remember Steve Jackson coaching with him with Harbour. And he'd talk about a pub fight. This is a pub fight, boys. This is how aggressive we've got to get, And so, but I don't think I could go and do that now because, how do you avoid head contact? That this is one of the things, you're going to get head contact. Angus Tuttervale sprinting across the field as an All Black prop, trying to stop an Irish centre on a cut and accidentally having a head clash. Caleb Clark charging down a ball in Super Rugby and jumping in the air and his hip hits a guy's head. He gets off. He's sent off. Could you guys now technically go back and coach at that level that you guys were coaching at before, do you think, under these current rules?
Oh, I think so. I think so. There's always there's always room for, within any set of rules, you've obviously got to coach it. So I think, understanding the technical stuff, there's technical part of the game, and there's the technical and getting your body right. And, rugby's a go forward sport, and the collision's only part of it. And your body position being the right height, whether it's for a tackler or a ball carrier or a cleaner, and all those, the biomechanics that go into doing that and making that part of the game what we like, effective. I think as a coach, there's huge satisfaction in helping players get that right. I just think the hardest thing is when you can't in your own head go back to a point you can reconcile and say, that's all logical, that makes common sense. Mm. That's probably, I think that's what you talk about with Steve Hansen and that clip at the start of the show. It's just like, it's really, really hard to understand the differences. And you think you're coaching something right. And then a player you think you've done a good job with, and Sam Cane, one of the best tacklers in the world, gets in trouble, in the big game, at the big dance. But the answer yes.
I've been 6 years out of it now. I probably couldn't go back because I'm a dinosaur. I wouldn't understand it. But I mean, it must be exceptionally frustrating as coaches now because you're not saying to your boys like old Jacko used to go out and pub fight. You're not teaching them to go out and tackle wrong. That's no coach in the world would do that. And I remember it used to be big on wrapping the ball, which then means you have to be, as Herbie said, you have to be more upright to be getting the guys. So whether they're still doing that or not now, I doubt it because that's head-on-head clashes and everything. So I think it'd be exceptionally frustrating as a coach now. And I joke about it, but Sam Cane going to a tackle school, my God, what?
Yeah.
He should be teaching the tackle school.
Yeah, I mean, did you see Sam Cane against Ireland? I did.
Yeah.
She would. You don't need to go to a tackle school. So that I could see it being exceptionally frustrating because no coach goes out and says, right, let's get the tackle technique wrong so that we can play with 14 men. So I think that side of it, and it comes back, and we've got 4 good brains here. I wouldn't know. I don't know how you can coach any more than what these guys are doing on the field. I've been to a couple of Blues coaching sessions, and you watch it and they're doing well, and every single tackle they're teaching is around the midriff or lower.
Yeah.
So, but training's different to the dynamics of a game. As Herbie said, Jesse Creel was a very late movement for Sam to come in. Sia Khaleesi went down, and so did Artie. So it went head on head. So those aren't things you can feasibly coach. You can't coach to get away from those factors. So it's a hard one.
So
I think the other thing. Sorry, Kev, you go, bro.
Oh yeah, no, I was just going to quickly say, thanks, Kevin. Is that the watching the women's game in the weekend as well, and listening to the comments from the Sky commentators that after that was about the injuries, about how the ladies will tackle around the hips and still get knocked out. The thing is, nothing against women, but we know that women do have a bit stronger hips than men. And but the thing is, but if a player gets knocked out tackling around the hips, is that player that that caused the injury by their hip? Are they yellow carded now? So this is the question.
And that's the frustration, isn't it? We're looking at that consistency, and so when you look at this is all we're asking is consistency, and then we're also asking. Well, I think both of you guys hit it on the head too. Is as coaches, you don't go out and teach guys to clash heads. It's all about good technique, and there's still a place for that ball and all of the smother tackle, especially when you're 5 meters out from the line. You want to be able to wrap the guys up chest to chest. So again, it does come down to is there intent? Is there malicious intent in there? And this is where I think we've just got to go back to maybe just put it on report. And if it is a red 20 minutes, that's a decent punishment for a team. But let's bring the next guy back on, because in a World Cup final, losing not only your captain, but losing your number 7, and Herb, you were a number 7 back in the day. How influential was Peter Steph du Toit for the Springboks once Kane went off? He had no challenges, correct?
Yeah, I mean, he had a great game anyway, didn't he? I mean, he got Geordie a couple of times. I think Geordie would have been checking his ribs a few times. But again, good example of getting his timing right, getting his body position right, and, to have a pretty big impact and an effect on the game. But certainly, having a loose forward makes, 15, 18 tackles a game, that they're going out or someone having to cover, or, even the fact that Geordie had to go and spend time as a flanker, did a great job, but probably took him out of his midfield hit-ups. There's a whole lot of other factors, like you say, that detract and take away from, what we all wanted to be the best game of rugby we've ever seen.
A great spectacle.
Yeah, so, but I mean, I do think, so having any player gone based on something that you can't clearly differentiate between another player not going off or staying off, that's, like Howie's been talking about, it's the real frustration. Just to that bit about too low, Kev, when I was coaching the last few years with First 15, I actually we did KGB tackles. So the only place ours was based on start of the season. We had a few boys going a bit high around the heads and had to go to the judiciary a couple of nights on a Tuesday night with my young First 15 boys. And so KGB was just knees, guts and balls. That was the only place we were allowed to tackle. And if the ball was on, like you said, Geoff, you go for the ball because, in the rules at the moment, if I can hold you up with the ball, I get a turnover. I'm not sure I agree with that, but and the gut is obviously a good safe place to put your shoulder, and your knees, again, good way to put them to the deck, but certainly stayed away from hips, like you said, Kev, and because that's knockout land. So there are ways and stuff you can get around it all too, but it just takes away from the game when, one of the best players in the world, captain of a team, can't be there right through and is almost a felon, when in reality, as we can see, there's so little to separate it all.
Well, so in the position I was in, Geoff, I was 15 or 18 tackles less than Herbie.
Yeah, you are.
I'm probably not an expert.
Oh, mate, doesn't it piss you off how these forwards give us back such a hard time, eh, Howie?
Oh, no, 15 or 18. I couldn't count that high.
15 or 18.
I think, that Steph Detoy is a good example. I think he got his technique right in pretty much every hit he made. And he may have gone close a couple of times. I can't recall. I haven't seen the game, but I love the KGB of what Herbie. But as Herbie's done, I'm sure many coaches around here are trying to get us to get the player to go in that midriff or in the hip. But as you said in the ladies' game, Kevin, I know for me, I made the mistake of trying to tackle Inga low and copped his knee. So I was in Disneyland for God knows how long. So it's a collision sport. It's a dynamic sport, and accidents are going to happen. And sending a guy off for an accident in a World Cup final is not where the game should be. And if you are going to be steadfast with it, as I've said, you either go to the 20-minute red card or you put it on report and do it after the game where we still have 15 on 15. Look, if someone kicks someone in the head, get them off, and there's no 20-minute rule or anything. That's, to be honest, the team suffers for that one guy's bad indiscretion, or if he gouges or whatever. There is no 20-minute rule. That's terrible play we don't want in our game. But for an accidental tackle, to then lose a player for the whole match of a World Cup final, you really have to dig deep and look at how we can be better with that.
Yeah, absolutely. On that too, guys, Geoff, is that, that when you've got a World Cup and you've got 10 camera angles and you've got 5 guys in the bunker and a couple of hidden guys making the real calls, and that's the top end of the sport, and then you're going to translate that down to a college game where there's nothing, it's just what the referee can see at the time. And that's the other thing, we play so much rugby now, we'll go on 10 phases, penalty advantage, it gets that whole 2 minutes of rugby gets wiped out, and goes back to whatever. But what you can see and what's reasonable, there's a lot of judiciary happening game time at the moment. And I think you said before, how if we can get the judicial part of the game on a Tuesday, Wednesday night for the first 15 coaches to take their head-high tackle boys along and sort out. But in the game, if it's not clear, I think if the threshold for reds was higher, then again, I think everyone would be happier. It'd be easier to accept. And then Sam Cane has his day in court on a judiciary, gets his 3-game match ban, whatever. That's easier to deal with than he didn't get to make the last 10 tackles he could have made. It might have made a difference. So, I look at a driving analogy, careless driving dangerous driving, reckless driving. Careless, it's often just an accident. Stuff happens. You're driving along, hit a slippery bit of road. Dangerous is high. You're probably doing something you know's not too good, but reckless, you're doing it and you know it's dangerous and you know there's risk to you and someone else, but you keep on doing it. That's sort of where the red card should sit in my mind, and it should be really clear in the referee's eye and the viewer's eye. And if you're not, I love the report system that league uses, just put them on report and sort it out afterwards. Don't be the judge and jury on the paddock in the game unless it's really clear and obvious.
Yeah, well put, Herbie.
Yeah, well, the other thing is too, I don't know if you saw it on my page, but it did come out also, though, with the TMOs. There were protocols in place with the TMOs. Yeah. And it clearly states there at one point that at the end of the day, the referee still has the final say. Now, in the final,
you reckon
Wayne Barnes was not having the final.
The protocol was get involved every bloody minute.
Exactly. And when Aaron Smith scored, and when Aaron Smith scored that try, it clearly states that the TMO can only go back 2 phases from a try scored. So if you really want to get technical, what is a phase? And secondly, was it probably 3, 4, 5 phases?
Be careful there, Kev, because that was definitely a knock on, and not sure about Talia's pass to Bodie for the try we actually scored. So,
well, exactly.
Well, let's talk about that incident, because that's a good one. Because the guidelines say that you can go back 2 phases. It doesn't say as a rule; it says guidelines. They chose to go back to 5, 6 phases to that line out, and clearly it was a knock on. But clearly, too, you can hear Barnes saying twice, no knock on, play on, no knock on. So then we played on. Now, what was the influence then? How much of an influence should the TMO have had on that? Because then if we go back to that line out, you can clearly see that Etzebeth played Retallick in the year, which, I don't know, to me, that's illegal, yes or no? I mean, is that, if they're in the year, feet are off the ground, they're playing the ball, and so that should be a penalty, All Blacks.
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yep.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely. So if we're going back TMO and the influence on the TMO, why are we stopping then at the knock on? It should be penalty first, penalty All Blacks, knock
then
on
you get into
second.
Then you get into conspiracy theories. But I mean, this is a good, clear video. That's a good, clear picture of, obstruction of the line out, which would normally be. So if you go back that far, go back another 2 seconds and give the All Blacks a penalty.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's right,
exactly.
I mean, the gutting thing was, guys, that was one hell of a try. Richie Mo'unga was unbelievable to create that try. And that's the only sad thing, but it was, was a knock on. That's how about if the one at the back of the scrum, Faf de Klerk, knocked on? How about if South Africa had scored from that? Then
it comes back to the influence of TMO. How much influence do we want our TMOs having? And they should have very minimal.
Right.
And it goes back to then the sole referee as the referee on the field.
Back when we were old buggers running around the field, didn't it used to just be the referee asked the TMO?
Yeah, exactly.
Why can't it's a simple bloody thing. Why can't we go back to that? I think I saw a knock on that line out. Can you just have a look? Let's play on. And then in the air it comes, there was a knock on. Thank you, bang.
Like an extra set of eyes, yeah.
I would rather that Barnes goes, mate, was that a try or not? Mate, I think there might have been a knock on. Can you please have a look? We'll continue playing. I'd feel better with that than going 5 phases, beautiful try, and the TMO goes, oh, hang on, mate, I've got to go back. And it takes 5 minutes for him to go back to see the knock on. And so there we are watching, like I'm changing over already to supercars or whatever I'm watching.
Yeah. A lot of stuff.
Goes back to what Rab said before, when we scored that try, when Bodie scored the try in the end, we were the same. We sat there and thought, oh, well, what's he going to pull it up now? Was it a knock on? Was it a forward pass? And they're going to find something. They're going to wind it back. And then it was like, oh, well, who? World Cup final. And we're sitting there with that,
too scared to jump around.
I thought they were going to call Talia's pass forward. I honestly thought they were going to call it forward.
Yep.
Okay, so here's a good one for you. I was watching the cricket last night. Now, did you see the cricket? Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. Okay.
Sleep.
Well,
I watched this get 400 and lose.
Yeah, I know. So that's another question, and we scored more boundaries. But last night, I can't even think of the guy's name now. But anyway, the Sri Lankan guy came out, and Bangladesh had just got a wicket. He came out, he was about to take strike, and then he went, oh, hang on, my helmet's broken. And one of the Bangladeshis jokingly went, how's that?
Oh,
For the first time in cricket, Angelo Matthews, that's right. He got timed out. Never ever happened in cricket before. Because he took more than 2 minutes to face the ball, he was given out. Now, whoa. I look at that and I'm going, wow, that's really going to blow up the cricket fraternity. But the thing is, when you're watching cricket and it's an LBW and the team appeals and the umpire goes, you're out. The player then goes, he's got 10, 15 seconds to ask for a review. They go, okay, review. Quick, look, yes, no, you're safe, gone. I mean, in 40 seconds, that's normally all done. So with all the technology we have nowadays, why are we taking 5-10 minutes to have a look at a knock-on in rugby? Because basically the umpire will say, oh, yeah, I got it wrong, you're not out, stay. Or, no, you were out, piss off, So, and then you look at... with the NFL, right? If there's a really dubious decision in American football, the coach has the opportunity to throw a flag on the ground. I'm not saying we go to gridiron, but the thing is, the referee then goes to the screen. You can't see what he's looking at. He goes back, has a look, comes back and says whether it's a change in decision or decision stands. There's just... seems to be a seamless flow to these other sports. Whereas, as you've already pointed out, with rugby union now, it just seems like let's have a conference and get the board of directors around and have a cup of tea and coffee about it.
Plus, you've got those TMOs based away from the grounds. I didn't even realise that. You've got some totally independent guys who are reviewing some plays who are like 10 Ks away from the actual ground. So are you guys familiar with that, and maybe enlighten some of our listeners as to what that's all about?
Didn't have a clue. Did not have a clue that there was another two guys. So they've got 83 TMOs, have they, planted around the world?
Well,
not that I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that I'd heard that there was not only not only the guy, the TMO, in the supposed bunker with two other people with him, then they got another two people.
Yeah, so the other ones that Howie do must be the top end stuff. So there's two of them, as I understand, and they are separate, and they are we won't know who they are, although there's a group of I suppose referees that they're selected from, and I think they call them TMO1 and TMO2 of that little group, and they both get to look at it, and if they that's about whether a yellow becomes a red specifically, I'm pretty sure. That's the higher end of that judiciary. And if they both agree it's a red, it's a red. If they both agree it's a yellow, it stays a yellow. If one thinks it's a red and one thinks it's a yellow, then TMO1, his vote has more weight and it becomes a red. And again, so they are... Again, even the simple fact that these people have to be hidden, that's the other disappointing thing for me, is it's almost like they know they're going to cop it because they're going to be doing stuff. And so, again, you're putting referees in situations where, I'm sure referees don't want to be the centerpiece of the sport, but they're becoming it because of the way they have to interpret rules. And I think it was really fair. Barnes did a great job in the circuit. You don't always... not in control of the hand you're dealt, but how you deal with your hand. He refed as good as he could, and he did a great job. And he's he shouldn't have to finish his international refereeing career, feeling a bit crap because he's been outstanding. But there were things like you said that if it's the referees in charge or these TMOs get the charge. So again, that was judiciary. The challenge I've got with the judiciary on a side note there is, if it was Sam Cane and it was the All Black coaching and they had real time to say, hey, this is if it was real clear cut, red card, during a game time, there was no chance at defence. There was no chance for the All Blacks or Ryan or whoever the tackle coach is to go along with Sam Cane, sit in front of those two TMOs and say, hey, you guys think there's no mitigating circumstances. We actually think there is. Look what's happened with Creel. Look what's happened with Sam, Look how, but there was no chance of that. And it was just that's where I think the judiciary is wrong in that point. Call it on the field, yellow or red, leave it like that. If you're not sure, put on a report, deal with it after the 80 minutes. And the 80 minutes now is turning into 100 minutes because of how much time we're spending reviewing this stuff, like you said, Kev, get it over and done with real quick and keep playing.
Yeah, and the other point is, sorry, Geoff, I'll just quickly shout out there that the other point is, isn't there 2 other assistant referees on the field? Or linesmen, as they called them in the old days.
Right. Forgot about
that. So you've actually got 3 full officials on the field of play. So and often you go, how? And then you look at that and you go, how did the linesman not see that? Sure, the referee might have had his back turned, but the linesman in replays, how often do you see a linesman standing right there and seeing a foul play or a knock on or something like that? And are they really just there for show?
It's funny, Kevin, because I actually watch grassroots rugby. I love the heartland rugby side of things, and there's 3 people. That's it, and there'll be mistakes, and the great thing is there'll be a bit of grumbling from the players, but then they just get on with it. That's okay. Yeah, it was probably a little knock. We'll get on. We'll play, and I love that. I love jumping on grassroots rugby and watching because it's the kind of rugby that I want to see. It's free, it's open, there's very few stoppages because there is no God
TMOs.
from the clouds coming down to stop things, And I like I said, like I keep saying, I don't know how we can get back to that, to get back to all of us starting to love rugby again, because after that World Cup, regardless of had the All Blacks won it still would have been, what's going on with our game? It really
that's the big thing about why we wanted to have this little episode today. It wasn't a pity party or a sore loser party. It was trying to break it down and analyse it and hitting it on the head. As Jason Ryan said after the game, they just want, consistency. Yeah. We heard Steve Hansen on the introduction here as well. Yeah. So for me, it's around, as I said, Wayne Barnes was refereeing to the letter of the law. So we've got to try and simplify our game. Because even my wife, she's been married to me for 30 years, still turns to me and says, what was that for? I'm like, well, I think he is off his feet. Well, wasn't he doing that just before as well? I'm like, yeah, well, it's just the interpretation. So you got non-rugby people watching the World Cup final, probably a game of rugby for the first time, sitting down with a beer in a bar in Bulgaria, thinking, oh, this looks pretty good. Let's watch this. How do they comprehend that game? This is what I'm saying. And rugby league is a simple game now. And you mentioned it, Howie, that NRL Grand Final was just, it was so fast. No referee invasion there and just a brilliant game. Compare that to our Rugby World Cup final. So the question now to you guys then comes back to how much of an influence should the TMO have? How many referees should we have for a start? What can World Rugby do to actually change it? Taking into account then too that study we talked about just a little while ago, talking about the actual game of rugby isn't a dangerous game. Yeah, it is for some people, but, are we protecting our players too much at the detriment of the product we're putting on the field? And how do we change it? So I'm going to open that up to you guys and get some feedback on what you think. Obviously, the 20-minute red card is a biggie. I'm totally in favour of that. I think that's a really good option. What else can we do?
You go, Howie.
Well, I'm a big advocate of and World Rugby's got to get their head out of their bums and take a leaf from NRL, and that's the only reason I can see why they won't take this on is because it's a league thing. Well, it's a very, very good league thing, and we should adopt it. And I for that side of things, and also I would rather that the referee controls the game, give everything back to him, so. If he thinks something wrong or he's not sure about something, he asks the TMO. I felt like at times Wayne Barnes was running around that final trying to get the bloody gnat out of his ear because he had the guy in him. It's like I just love it to go back to the ref and the 2 guys on the sidelines. And if they see things, can you just have a look at that? Go to the TMO, just have a look. for a try, unsure with a try, because I know there's a few issues with the bunker and league, but generally it's only if they score tries or, was that a try, wasn't a try? And I would love to see it go back to the referee, and the referee is the sole man in charge of that. And if he needs help, he asks. But at the moment, it seems it's completely the other way around, where the TMO will tell the ref that this has happened, or this has happened, or that's happened, or so I think the refs just lost control of the game, and I'd love to see it go back to him with the 20-minute red card. If it's blatant, as Herbie said, reckless stuff, then it's gone. That red card, the 20-minute doesn't apply to that team. They suffer for the actions of one idiot who's done something stupid, and you bring in the report for accidental head clashes that will then go on to be ruled after the game. That would be my solutions for it, to make it a simpler game again.
Well said, mate.
I'm confused, but no, I get that. Yeah, good points, Howie.
Well, you're a bloody loose forward, mate. You're always confused.
Yeah,
you just chase the ball.
I'm still concussed, but I think there's so many rules in rugby as well, and it is such a dynamic, moving, fast-moving sport, and just simplicity around the interpretation is obviously what we all want, and what that's going to look like. I think one of the things that in the referee world, I've only refereed a few games, and generally on the other side either a player or a coach, but every year rugby seems to always be playing with the rules, while in league the rules and a lot of these other sports you talked about, Kev, their rules are relatively, you could pick up a rule book from 20 years ago in league and it's probably very similar to now, or gridiron or American football, or cricket certainly. But on rugby there's so many changes, and every year the referees, almost to be part of the system, they get, hey, this year's focus is the ruck, or this year's focus is the tackle, and then what you see is this overemphasis and overfocus on some things, and then what you thought was a penalty from last year, hey, that guy's gone off his feet at a ruck or sealing off the ball 2 years ago, that was all what was about, giving the defence a chance at the ball. And you're looking at World Cup now and you see all those women Ireland players lined up like iguanas with their hands on the ground over the ball for long in a ruck, and technically by the letter of the law they that's not that legal, off their feet. So but then we can't worry about that because we're worried about whether someone's doing a shoulder charge from the other side. So I think just getting good simple rules, creating I think the consistency will also come with less tinkering and real simple clarity around it. And then there is a lot around that technical side of stuff, because like I said before, I think aligning stuff with, like I talked to you about, Geoff, good athletes will always use good biomechanics to go into collision and running situations. It's not a natural body position to be walking around, with your head down, crawling, 30 centimeters above the ground. You lose vision, you use agility, you're going to fall over. Standing upright, running, what pre-contact is probably what a wrestler's like. So getting all that stuff aligned in common sense with, and then having a simple set of, rules around, hey, was that careless? Was it reckless? Was it dangerous? And up that threshold. So ultimately there's more likely to be 15 on 15. One other thing I'd say too is I'm not sure I agree with the difference of advantage in rugby. So for some reason in a normal advantage, you can play on for, 2 or 3 phases or whatever, right? But then for foul play advantage, for some reason, attacking team can go on ad nauseum, 10, 12, 2 minutes of rugby and then get dragged back. I think those elements of the game should change as well. It's either a team gets 5 phases or 20 seconds or 10 meters of advantage, and that's it. And if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you go back to the last play. That's another area that I probably think, we should really create consistency and simplicity around. The other big thing, I think, rugby league and rugby are the 2 closest sports, obviously, in the way they're played. One of the things about rugby league is the risk of losing the ball for a ball carrier going into contact, other than a one-on-one tackle, is 0 almost, other than knocking it on himself. So because of that, the ball carrier can actually go into collisions a lot higher. He doesn't have to worry about being down low, because in rugby, you can get held up in a tackle, opposition get the ball. If you're too low and go to ground too early, you're going to, marks or Adi Savir all over, it's a turnover. So it's a really, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, if you're a ball carrier. if, for example, from the higher end of the viewpoint, you didn't lose the ball when you went into a maul and it didn't get the ball out, maybe you'd see rugby players going into contact a little bit higher and a little bit safer as well. And, hey, just carry on with the scrum or whatever. So, yeah, there's a few details in there, but nice and simple, nice and consistent.
Great
Most
points, man.
sense
I knew I
30
got
years, Herbie.
Hey,
The most sense you've made in 30 years.
appreciate that feedback. Thank
I
you.
knew I got you two rugby brains on here for a good reason, eh?
On the back of Herbie's point with that going in high, give the ball back to the team going forward.
Exactly.
Don't, just because you're held up or anything, make it a contest in there. More people have to come in, opens the field up. Because if you know you're going to go forward, you're going to stick guys in there to go forward, bang, scrum, away we go again, or whatever it ends up being.
Yeah.
But, otherwise...
I agree. And for the defensive team, for them to get the ball, they have to strip it and they have to get it. Yeah. If they don't get it, then it's unplayable. One of the worst rules in rugby is, you're seeing a guy go into contact and he's trying to put his knee on the ground. And in all common sense, you're thinking, that guy should just be able to rip that ball off him and carry on. But for some reason, the referee goes, knees on the ground, it's a ruck. Yeah. And you're going, hang on, mate, I've got this. Why should I let go of this prick? I got the ball. I'm about to nick it off him. But then, so again, if the ball carrier has to go super low, leads with his head, gets KO'd, or makes the tackler a dangerous tackler because he's just doing a normal tackle. Yeah, so let's change that rule while we're at it.
There is one more little point I want to put to you guys as well, and it comes back to that clear release and then poaching the ball as well. Obviously, Yardy's one. So Barnes, penalised him for no clear release when it comes up on the screen. He apologises to Artie. I didn't see that. Is there a reason there where he could have reversed that? Or because what happened then, obviously the Springboks stood up and they got 3 points when clearly Artie had released him and Barnes had acknowledged that he had made a mistake, yet he still allowed the Springboks to gain 3 points. Now, again, don't want to sound like a sore loser. I just want to bring in a situation and sort of talk about that and think, okay, cool, is this something that we can change in the game, or do we just got to accept it?
It's a really interesting one. I mean, you probably need to get a referee on because, again, it goes back to the fact that there are so many rules and laws, maybe get Polly in. But I think that was your first clip at the start there with Sir Steve talking about that. He did mention that and that frustration, saying acknowledged fault, but then still the 3 points was scored and obviously had a material impact on the difference in the end result. So I don't know the ruling around that, but I'm sure there will be a rule about whether you can or not. But again, based on how far you can go in certain parts of the game with video analysis or whatever, or review and hindsight, you could argue that that was a toughie.
Yeah.
So actually, sorry, Geoff, I'll just point out there. Yeah, a referee can then say, "Yep, try Aaron Smith, awesome. Check in the air." TMO will change the referee's mind where it clearly states the referee has the final say. So there is places in play where a TMO can change a referee's mind. We've seen it firsthand. I mean, and as I said, it's not rugby per se. It's all the technology that is available now for us to watch and divulge over. I mean, it literally happened just the other day in football. Arsenal. Newcastle scored a goal. The replay clearly showed the ball was out for a goal kick. But they went, oh, no, it didn't go out. The Arsenal coach was fuming. Not that I care that Arsenal lost. I'm glad they lost.
I saw that one.
Yeah, but the thing is, the TMOs and video bunkers, they seem to have the right or some unwritten right to change a referee's mind. So, maybe they should look at this balance of saying the referee's wrong all the time and sometimes come back and go, oh, actually, I was wrong. They've got to get this balance back. And I still reckon that the TMO should only be asked to be used by the referee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Unless you see that reckless thuggery play, but again, they need to be really clear around what interpretations are, because then you every time they give someone some grey area. A lot of
Again,
grey.
it comes back to other incidents there, like Shannon Frizzell's crocodile roll. Again, as a coach, I used to be slapping guys in the back of the chest, wrapping chest, and then teaching guys to actually drop their hip and roll with it, because you don't want to be sitting in there trying to wrestle upper body. The best way to do it is you actually drop your hip and you roll with them. That was a first for me. It wasn't a neck roll. He was dropping his hip.
He did that side of it perfectly, didn't he?
And then again, interpretation, isn't it? I was blown away by that. After 3 minutes, we've lost Shannon Frizzell for 10 minutes. So, again, we've just got to go back. We've got to try and simplify these rules. We've got to make sure that a Form 3 kid who's never seen rugby before understands the game. We've talked about it before. Off your feet. If you're doing a press up on the ground, you're off your feet. You can't support your body weight. But again, it's just being allowed to be pushed aside, and then something else will be pulled up at the next ruck, and then there's all that confusion and resentment. So I think we've just got to solidify the game.
On that, Geoff, too, guys, and Kev, as I interpreted that during the game, because that was one that I was extremely surprised about. He was yellow carded because of the outcome of falling on the knee. Nothing to do with his technique of the actual clean out, and the fact that the South African hooker was pretty good at his job and had a good wide leg base, which we coached to make you stable. And Shannon didn't do a neck roll because he was careful not to do that and didn't go around the head, but was trying to pull him off the ball, which he should be entitled to do. But he was yellow carded because he fell on the knee, eh? Or was he yellow carded because of his illegal technique? Because I thought it was the illegal technique, and
illegal technique causing injury. I'm assuming that was the outcome of that. I'm not sure.
Because that one,
it was definitely placing pressure on the leg on the ground.
Okay. Yeah. No. Again, we could talk for hours and hours. We've been over an hour already, and I know you guys are busy, and we probably need to wrap it up. But hey, any final thoughts, guys? Is there anything that we've missed out? Anything that you want to get off your chest? And obviously after today, and once we leave this, I'm going to move on. I'm back to being an All Black supporter. I'm back to being a rugby union supporter.
How much does World Rugby pay board of directors? Because I think us four would be pretty well suited to it.
Absolutely.
So we'll be interested. Donuts.
Geoff and Kev, to be honest, and Herbie, I would love to see some change. And I think we've got a tone-deaf World Rugby, even with the furor that's gone over about this. But I would love to see some change. But, I'm not holding my breath.
Well said. And hopefully with that report that came out, that study, maybe they put that in with the report. They have a look at that World Cup final, or the World Cup in general. And then we can only hope, can't we, that there's going to be some changes for the better for the game.
Yeah. I mean, there's a million rules, aren't there? And it is, but I mean, part of what's great about the game is it's dynamic, it's physical, it's, 15 on 15. It's such a unique sport. And when it's right, it's the best game to watch. And, obviously at the moment when we're looking at things that we don't quite agree with or can't quite reconcile in our logic, it creates all sorts of frustrations. But I'd just like to see it real simple. I mean, you want referees to be able to enjoy being part of the game as well. Like I said, you don't want the world's best referee finishing. We had a New Zealand referee, great servant to our game, got on a bit of, on the wrong side of the team at the 2011 World Cup, wasn't it? So it shouldn't happen. We should all be able to be involved in the game and enjoy it and finish and retire happy, like me and Howie. Not too grey there, Howie.
Gentlemen, you guys are legends, and I really, really appreciate you giving up your time and having a chat this morning. Kevin Schuler, Shane Howarth, you guys, thanks so much. Next time we see each other, beers are on me. Unless you want tequila shots, Herb, I don't know.
What's your address?
Awesome. Cheers, guys. Kev, do you want to wrap it up, mate?
Thanks, fellas.
Cheers, again, Shane, Kev, thanks very much for joining us. It's been an awesome show. Next week, of course, Super Rugby teams are announced on Thursday, so we'll have a look at those. Maybe we might see a couple of guys come out of retirement. I don't know. But, hey, let's hope a few of the Heartland boys are in that Canterbury Crusaders side because, you know, the might of red and white West Coast. It's been a great year, but now we start looking forward to 2024. Till next week. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Geoff. Thank you, Kev. Thank you, Shane.
Yeah,
And
boys.
I'll come off here now.
Well,
Take care. See you, fellas.